Hello everyone. I'm going to be speaking about sustainable living, and I'd like to begin by quoting some of my favorite lines from modern English poetry. Don't worry, I'm not going to make this into a literature class. So the lines go this way. Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? And where is the knowledge we have lost in information? T.S. Eliot wrote these lines in 1934, but they ring even more true today. As we continue our joyride on this beautiful, life-giving planet, along with 8.7 million other species that we share this planet with, forests are burning, glaciers are melting, species are going extinct, and the climate has changed. The population of our species, Homo sapiens, currently stands at 8.2 billion. Every minute, 130 people are born. And you know, the words Homo sapiens originate in Latin. They mean wise man or thinking man. But I don't seem to feel that we are actually living in a very wise fashion. I mean, you know that while we are messing up our own precious planet, we are looking at Mars to rehabilitate ourselves. I mean, how wise is that? Because living sustainably means living within the boundaries of a finite planet. But the World Overshoot Day this year was on July 24th. World Overshoot Day is the date in history, in a year, when people use up all the natural resources that our planet can make in one single year. In 1995, the date was on the 21st of November. So whatever we are using after July 24th, we are borrowing from the future. I mean, the energy in this room is not from this year's capital. It's from next year's natural capital. So we are cutting more trees, catching more fish, mining more metals, and using more energy than our planet can produce in one single year. Do you think that's wise? I mean, like your pocket money. If you have pocket money for 12 months and you finish it by July, is that a sensible way of living? And that's what we are doing with our natural resources. The thing about our life is that there is so much information around us, but we are failing to convert that information into knowledge and subsequently into wisdom. Information only gets to become knowledge when we hang it on a personal context, and then we reflect and introspect and use that knowledge to act. Knowledge is not high grades in exams. Knowledge is knowing and doing what needs to be done. Because what you're learning is not to write an exam. You're learning so that you can live as responsible citizens on this one beautiful planet that we all share. For example, if you were taught about climate change and you came to know that, oh, the monsoons have been disrupted, there's a lot of debt burden on the farmers, and they're committing suicide. So what should your action be? To write that in the answer script, or to make sure that you do not waste food, because food is sacred. So the recent plastic policy of our school is a wonderful connection between life and learning. But it must continue to be implemented in a robust fashion, and it must be monitored vigilantly, or we lose the plot. Because you see, living sustainably is just not about knowing the 3 R's. It's extremely responsible business. Last year, we lost 6.7 million hectares of rainforest. You know what that area is equal to? It's equal to 9.38 million football fields. And most of this forest was cleared by fires because food had to be grown for us. Agriculture had to be done. In 2005, I remember when I was working on a WWF India, Worldwide Fund for Nature India elephant conservation program, you know, we would push herds of 25, 30 elephants back into the forest. The forest, their habitat had shrunk, there wasn't enough food, and they would come out into the villages to raid the paddy fields. And there was like potential, and there would be human-elephant conflict. So we would use like beat drums, burst crackers, shine these bright lights into the eyes of the elephants, and they would run for their lives. And it was heart-rending to see, you know, there were these baby elephants running alongside their mothers with their tails high up in the air. And we had to just push them back. And it was their habitat we had taken. When you look at the decline in the average population of, you know, monitored wildlife, it's a 73% decline in the last 50 years. When we look at glaciers, well, there are 275,000 glaciers in our world, and these, along with ice sheets, are the repository of the world's freshwater resources. When you look at closer home, 2/3 of the Hindu Kush Himalaya glaciers are under huge crisis. Every day glaciers are melting, and by 2100, they're expected to vanish. What then will happen to our snow-fed rivers? Ganga, Brahmaputra, Yamuna, Indus, the cradles of our civilization. What then will happen to us? So, I think that we have so much information and so much knowledge, but we need to make that connection to our lives. And the next thing we need to do is to become very mindful of our values. Because values are the soil in which our habits grow. Our actions, the roots of our actions are in our values. And it's important for each one of us to continually clarify our values. Why are we here? What are our aspirations? What is a good life? We have to ask these questions because values become the compass that help us navigate a sustainable life. And we must do this. One very good way of clarifying values is to use meditation as a tool, you know, to become mindful. I'm not saying go to the Himalayas and sit and meditate, but to become aware of your breath and be mindful of the trail of micro decisions we take in order to live our lives. So, values, clarification of values lies at the heart of our being able to live sustainably. So like I told you, we lost 6.7 million hectares of rainforest last year. And the shocking thing is that the food produced after this, almost 30%, 2/3 of this is wasted annually. And then there are 720 million people who go to bed hungry every night. When we eat rice that we all consume, 2,500 liters of water are required to produce 1 kilogram of rice. A bowl of rice means 375 liters of water. That's like, you know, leaving your shower running for 30 minutes straight. So the point I'd like to make is that when you waste food, you're taking away that baby elephant's habitat, you're wasting water, and you're also wasting the toil of the farmer. So in order to live sustainably, we must respect the food on our plate. That's absolutely non-negotiable. And also, eating seasonal and eating local gives us a smaller footprint. It also, you know, channelizes the wisdom that has been passed down generations of what to eat in what season. When your grandmother cooks something local, don't ask for a pizza all the time. That's sustainable food. The next thing I'd like to flag in living sustainably is fashion. or what we wear. 8 to 10% of the world's carbon emissions are because of the fashion industry. And that's like if you put in all the international flights and shipping together, it's more than that, than the emissions of that. Every second, one garbage truck of textiles is thrown away. The textile industry uses more than 8,000 chemicals to manufacture all the fancy things that we wear. So when we are promoting fast fashion, we are actually helping the glaciers melt, and we are helping our planet get warmer. So what can we do? Well, we can buy better, buy less, choose better, and buy maybe timeless, durable pieces. We can swap, we can repair, we can donate instead of discarding. Even when you put on your washing machines at home, we can use fewer cycles and use more cold water cycles because that reduces the emission of microplastic shedding and also brings down our energy use. We can make wearing hand-me-downs a fashion statement and treat them like heirlooms. I wear my mother's and my late mother-in-law's saris and mekhla sadors instead of buying new ones. My siblings and I swap clothes all the time. So next time you want to hit buy on that fast fashion website, please consider the cost to the earth. But I think most importantly, in our pursuit of sustainable living, we need to think creatively and critically. We need to redefine for ourselves what a good life is. And in order to understand, let me tell you about the Human Development Index. The HDI, or Human Development Index, goes beyond just income. It puts or combines the scores of health, education, and standard of living, and the score ranges from 0 to 1. Now, India's HDI of 0.685 has been growing steadily through the years, but we still are in the medium development category, and we rank 130 out of 193 countries. India also has one of the highest income inequality levels in Asia. The top 10% of Indians own 77 to 80% of our wealth. Then out of that, the 1% people earn almost 40% of that wealth. And by contrast, the 50% down below there, they own less than 70% of the country's wealth. Is that a sustainable way of living? Is that how we want the world to be? So that takes me back to my question of what is a good life? Is it more things, more gadgets, more cars, more foreign holidays? Or is it a society of happy, healthy, and peaceful people? What kind of a life do you want? Do you want to live like in a polluted city, drive a fancy car, live in a plush apartment, while next door there's a slum where people are struggling to eke out a living? Or do you want to live in a quiet, unpolluted village or town where you can probably walk or cycle to work, where you can have these small enterprises and create jobs for people around you, and where people live with dignity and there's enough for everyone? Do you want to know the names of the latest cars and gadgets? Or would you like to know the names of the trees and birds and butterflies around you? I go back again to my WWF days when we were working in Madhya Pradesh outside the Panna Tiger Reserve with these Pardi Bahelia poachers. We were trying to set up a school for their children. Now, these children had no formal education, but they went with us into the forest and they took us on a nature trail. They knew the name of every tree in that forest. By the call of the bird, they could tell us which bird it was. They knew which gum to eat from the barks of the tree. They told us that if you apply the soil from the anthills, it helps alleviate pain when you have sprained your ankle or foot. These children knew they belonged to an incredibly fragile and wonderful ecosystem. For them, nature wasn't just a mute, fancy backdrop. For them, they were a part of it. They were a part of that fragile system. And I think that's key to beginning to fashion a life, to design your aspirations, so that you understand your place in this beautiful system. So what jobs would you like to do? Would you like to make a lot of money, but that would mean polluting the planet? Or would you like to create jobs and enterprises where you use the natural capital of the planet and live off its interest? Would you like to make policies for your government where the ecological, the socio-cultural, and the economic realms of our lives are balanced? Or would you just like to focus on economic growth, which has brought us where we are? So these are questions that you need to ask yourselves, and then reconsider the fact that are we Homo sapiens or Homo stultus, stultus being the Latin word for stupid. The choice is in our hands. Thank you.